I want to preach a message, a standalone message today. And I'm going to call this message the long and the short of it. The long and the short of it. And what you're going to get, in fact, I'm going to ask you to maybe give me a little bit of grace today, because I'm going to preach a little differently than I normally do. Normally I preach and we, I preach one point and we really focus on kind of like one major thing. But today, this is what we're going to do. Tonight, I am going to almost preach like I would preach one of our staff meetings. This is kind of how I preach our staff meetings. So I'm going to have like one major point, but I really got about 14 points today. Got about 14 things, because this has been a concept that the Lord has been dealing with me on during sabbatical. And it's approach and it's a way to see life. And I want to read out of James chapter 4. And by the way, I love the book of James. The reason why I love the book of James is it's about 80 to 85% application. Like the book is just like, do this. And I'm like, okay, right? I'm good at that. Just tell me what to do and I will do it. Some of Paul's writings, he goes into some pretty deep theology and you got to read it like 4 or 5 times to kind of even begin to wrap your mind around. I love James because it's just straightforward. This is what you should do. And in James chapter 4, verse 13, it says this. It says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you don't even know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then you vanish." So what James is saying in chapter 4 is that life is short. Come on, how many of you know life is short? Life is short, yeah. But then what happens in the Bible from time to time is, do you ever read something and then you read something else and it seems contradictory on its face? You read something and you're like, is the Bible contradicting itself? Because then in the very next chapter, so James just got done saying, hey man, this thing here today, gone tomorrow. Just like, you better get busy today because today's all you got. And then James chapter 5 verse 7 says, be patient. Therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. So James in chapter 4 says life is short. James in chapter 5 says life is long. Come on, how many of you experienced that life is long? Come on, I want to pray together today over the preaching of God's word as we talk about the long and the short of it. Let's pray together. God, we're grateful for your word. And Lord, I pray, God, that you would speak to us in a profound way tonight. God, maybe we thought we were just coming to kind of go to church and sing some songs and maybe hear an encouraging thing. But God, I pray that something would shift in the atmosphere tonight, God, that would change the way we are operating. God, I pray that we would get everything we can out of the life that you've given us. Lord, we love you, we need you, and we ask you to move. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Have you ever watched two people encounter the same realities but have a very different interpretation of what they encountered? Like every married couple on planet Earth, right? You're experiencing the same stuff, and yet how you interpret what you are experiencing is very, very different. This happens with Christina and I every time we go to Circle B. Now, if you're not, let me see if you know what Circle B is. You know what it is. Yeah, you've been, okay, you know what it is, right? Now, and you might not know this. Maybe, you haven't been there or something like that. But Circle B, it's like a preserve. And so you go there and there's like paths and it's like nature and demonic stuff like that. Okay, right? That's what it is, right? And when Christina and I, whenever Christina ropes me into going to Circle B, we are experiencing the same things, right? We are seeing the same things. We are walking the same trails. We are out in nature. The difference, though, is when we get to Circle B and we get out of the car, Christina just goes, and the Pocahontas in her begins to rise up, right? She just loves it. She loves the nature of it. She loves seeing the animals. She just, the trees, the paths. She loves when you walk around that bend and you see like the water. She loves the gators. When she sees the gators, she walks towards them. And she just loves it. Her heart rate slows down. But when I go to Circle B, I interpret the experience very differently. When I get out of the car, my head is on a swivel. Because I know I am getting ready to walk through a death trap, of which I am the prey. I am the hunted, okay? I am not the hunter, I am the hunted. And I'm walking around and every creature I'm afraid of, I hear things in the bushes and I'm free. It is not an enjoyable, relaxing experience to me. Now, we're experiencing the same realities, but different interpretations of what we're experiencing. You wanna know what's interesting? Is the same takes place as it pertains to how you and I view time. The same takes place. This is why, by the way, there are some realities, in case you didn't know this, I'm gonna really blow your mind with this part of the message. This is like, you're like, worth the price of admission. This is why I came to church tonight, right? But here's some realities about time. For every single one of us, there are 60 seconds in a minute. I told you. For every single one of us, man, there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. I love preachers. You just slow down like that. It sounds profound, right? All right? Come on, for every single one of us, there's 24 hours in a day. For every single one of us, there is 7 days in a week. For every single one of us, there's 28 to 31 days in a month. For every single one of us, there are 12 months in a year. Every single one of us, we are experiencing the same realities as it pertains to time. And yet, many times, you and I experience and have an interpretation of that time that is very different. This is why we say things like, this is taking forever. No, it's not. It's taking the same 60 seconds in 1 minute and the same, right? In the same 60 minutes in 1 hour. It's actually taking the same amount of time, and yet the way you and I interpret that time is very, very different. This is why sometimes time can go really slow. I just started working out in a specific way about 2 months ago, right? About 2 months ago, I was tired of just going to the gym and just kind of like, faking working out. Like, I'm sure I'm the only one that does that, right? I was tired of going to LA Fitness and going, okay, let's go to the treadmill. Okay, I'm gonna run until I don't wanna run anymore. And I would run until I didn't wanna run anymore. I'm sweating a little bit, okay, right? And then I'd go, okay, I'm gonna do some crunches. And I'd do some crunches. And, okay, I'm gonna lift biceps, okay. Whew. Hour later, I'd walk out. Didn't work out, right? So I was like, I need to change this up. I'm trying to build healthy habits. I want to do this thing for the long haul. And so I joined this place called Orange Theory. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in this place. But Orange Theory, it plays to my competitive nature. Now, where are the really competitive people in the room? Let me see your hand, you're competitive people. Yes, oh, I love you, right? I'm a very competitive person. Like if you and I were to sit down, like if we were just to have a conversation right here, and then we were like, okay, it's time to go, and we were to walk to the door, I would get to the outside door just before you did. We'd be racing. You wouldn't know it, but we would be racing, okay? Open the door just before you did. I won again, right? Very competitive. And so it plays on my competitive nature because you wear these little things. In fact, one of the first people that I've ever heard talk about this was Chris McLaughlin. And he said, you wear these things and you do your workout. In 27 minutes, you're like on a treadmill, and then the other 27 minutes, you're in a rower, and then you're doing some weights. And as you go, your heart rate is up on the screen. It's your name and your heart rate, right? It's got your heart rate, it's got how many calories you're burning, all that kind of stuff. And so I like it because it plays in my competitive nature, and it's really competitiveness with myself to go, okay, I gotta work harder because my heart rate isn't as high up as it needs to be at this point in the workout. However, there is one thing on this little screen that's up here that I wish they would take off. In fact, I might need to request it. There's one thing that I wish they would take off, and it's in the lower right-hand corner of this screen. It's a time ticker that counts up how long you've been working out. I wish they would take that part off because I'm always so discouraged when I look up and I see how little time has passed. Because the way it works is you run on the treadmill for 27 minutes and then you're 27 minutes. And so I hate it because when you're working out, there really is 120 seconds in a minute when you're working out. Come on, you ever been running on a treadmill? You're like, really, that's it? So there are times where I'm running on this thing and I want to look at my heart rate, but I don't want to see how long we've been working out. And so there are times when I try to go, but I couldn't see it. So I try it again. I'm like, I couldn't see it. And so eventually I'll look up, and it's almost like I'm addicted. I can't help but look at it. So I'm like, it's like I can't help it. It's like I didn't want to look at the time. It's like I swear it had been like 10 minutes and it had been like 42 seconds. We're all experiencing the same thing, different interpretations. Sometimes time can feel slow. Sometimes time can seem fast. In fact, when Christine and I are getting ready to go, especially on a long flight, I spend a lot of time figuring out what is going to be on my iPad when I go on long flights. I spend more time doing that than I do packing. Packing, I'm like, whatever. I'm like, I need to know what my game plan is to get through this flight. I need to know what shows am I watching, what order. I literally go, I'm gonna watch, I say what order I'm going to watch them in. I'm gonna watch these 2 shows, then I'm gonna watch this movie, then I'm gonna go back to 2 shows, then I'm gonna go to a movie. And why? Because if I play it right, it can actually make a long period of time seem shorter. Now, is it shorter? No. It just seems shorter. Now, if it was just a matter of us having different experiences with time, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But the problem is how you and I interpret time has more dramatic implications than we think it does. In fact, here's my point. My only point tonight, besides the other 16 I'm gonna give, is this. Our perception of the length of life nudges us into our directional decisions. Our perception of the length of life nudges us into directional decisions. Here's what I mean. If you think that life is only short, then what I've seen is people make panic decisions because they feel like life is short and I'm gonna miss out if I don't take every opportunity. And so they feel like life is passing them by and they don't have a confidence to go, no. They don't have a confidence to make sober decisions. They don't have a confidence to make those kind of decisions. Why? Because life is only fast. But also, if you see life only as slow, if life is only slow, if life is only long, then you will be overly discouraged by a temporary setback. I've seen people get overly discouraged by something that you won't even be thinking about in a week. People are like bummed out. Come on, remember like the person you broke up with when you were 13? No, exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. Remember how bummed you were? Come on. Yeah, I remember I broke up with this girl one time, and it was like a classic like middle school, high school relationship, right, which meant we dated for like 2 months, right? And you ever break up with somebody? I remember I broke up with her, and like it wasn't even that serious of a relationship, but she started crying, so I started crying. I didn't even know why I was crying. Why? Because time seems so concentrated sometimes. Just seems so long. So if you think life is only long, then you're gonna overreact to something that you're gonna be fine in 2 weeks. And so let me just encourage you with this. Life is long and life is short. So what I wanna talk about for just a few brief moments is this. How do you and I discern what season we're in so we can make the best possible decisions? Are we in a short season or are we in a life is long type of season? But oftentimes we don't even think about this. We just make decisions. We just go. We feel panic, and so we make decisions. We feel that life is long, and so we make decisions, and we force the issue. And in fact, I love that James pretty much tells us life is short and life is long. James chapter 4, verse 13. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow that we're going to go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you don't even know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little time, and then you vanish. Man, life comes at us fast. Have you ever had like a moment where somebody hits you with a question you didn't see coming? I mean, it just threw you off your game. Like life just comes at us fast, and sometimes we just don't know what to do. I remember I had one of these situations a couple years ago. And a couple years ago, Christine and I, we were at a Hillsong family retreat. So a couple times a year, all the Hillsong lead pastors and all the Hillsong family church lead pastors gather together, and we encourage one another, and we spend time together. And it's like literally like a mini conference with like 40 people. And it's just, Pastor Brian Houston, who pastors Hillsong Church, just picks like 2 or 3 people, and they speak, and they're probably preachers that some of you have heard of, and it's just like a little mini conference just with the people in the room. It's unbelievable. Then we spend a lot of time hanging out, and it's just a really, really encouraging time for Christine and I. Well, I have some rules when I go to these things, some internal rules. And one of those internal rules is when I get there, now the way these things usually work, we have dinner, and then usually we're kind of hanging out that night. And we hang out till late because sometimes we're in a different country, and so we don't even know what time it is, right? Our body clocks are all over the place. And I have a rule. I'm not going to go to bed until Pastor Brian goes to bed. Because I don't know how many more opportunities I'm going to get to sit in a small room with Pastor Brian Houston. So I'm like, I am every opportunity I have to just be around and be in the room. And typically it works out the same way where there's, maybe like 12, 13 guys or so hanging out at about midnight. And then at 1 a.m. it dwindles down. And at 2 a.m. it dwindles down. And then at 5 a.m. there's usually like 5 or 6 of us. And we're just hanging out, and amazing pastors, amazing leaders, Pastor Brian, just unbelievable, having fun conversations, serious conversations, not serious conversations. And I remember on one particular occasion a couple years ago, we're hanging out, and there's like 5, 6 of us, and one of the guys there, he says a word. He uses a word that I could tell Pastor Brian didn't like. He uses a word that Pastor Brian just didn't, and I know this because Pastor Brian had like a visceral reaction. Like the word was said, and it was like some might call it a curse word, right? Right? And Pastor Brian says, you can tell he didn't like the word, right? And this pastor, friend of mine, and he's part of the crew, goes, yeah, see, Pastor Brian doesn't like that word. And Pastor Brian goes, I just don't understand why you have to use that word. Is that word holy? Is it sanctified? That's what he said. Now, mind you, I'm watching this all happen. There's like 5 of us in the room. It's 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'm just like, oh, better you than me, right? Right? And it all happened so quick, guys. I didn't know what to do. It all happened so quick because then my friend over here goes, Pastor Brian, like everybody I know in ministry that's under 45 uses that word. Boom, without hesitation, Pastor Brian looks at me and says, do you use that word, Andrew? It happened so fast. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't ready for this question. And so it literally, the word was used, visceral reaction. He doesn't like when I use that word. Is it holy? Is it sanctified? Pastor Brian, everybody I know under 45 use that word. Do you use that word, Andrew? You know what, Pastor Brian? I do use that word from time to time. I do. The utter disappointment with which he looked at me. Something I will never be able to fully articulate. Life comes at you fast, man. Life comes at you fast. And what you and I need to know, man, is we need to know some knee-jerk reactions. We need to know like how we're going to respond when life comes at us fast. And so before I get into some ways to respond when it feels like life is going quick, I think there are a few things that make life go fast, or at least make life seem fast. Number 1, sudden loss. Sudden loss helps you understand the frailty of life. When you have sudden loss, I don't know if you've ever lost somebody really close to you. I've lost some people that were really close to me. Man, it almost pushes you back and it makes you understand just how frail life is. How when the Bible says that we are a vapor here for a little while, you have some moments that really remind you of that. Sudden loss can actually cause us to feel like, man, life goes too quick. Missed opportunities sometimes makes life feel fast. Missed opportunities. And what I find interesting about missed opportunities is missed opportunities have a way of creating panic that causes us to make irrational decisions. It's kind of like playing Tetris. You ever play Tetris and you put that one piece in the wrong spot? And because you made a mistake there, it starts stacking up on itself, and all of a sudden you can't even make the maneuvers that you want to make, all because you could trace it back to one piece you put in the wrong spot. That's exactly what happens in life. When we feel like we have a missed opportunity, we compound the interest by making more foolish decisions because we panic because we missed an opportunity. Another thing that I think really makes life feel fast is external pressures. This is why social media can be dangerous, because we have these external pressures. It used to be, I didn't know the new house you bought. I used to not know that, so I didn't care. I used to not know your situation, so I didn't feel as much pressure about where you were at in life. Now the problem is we can compare ourselves with people that do what we do for a living. Now we can compare ourselves with other people that are in our age range. We can compare ourselves, and that is a problem because what you are comparing is like their highlight with like your mundane, ordinary life. And you gotta be really, really careful. Those are some things that can make life feel like it's fast. So here's a few things of what to do when life is just moving quick. Number 1, and I just ripped this from John Mayer, say what you mean to say. Say what you mean to say. Gotta say what you mean to say. Life's too short to think great thoughts about people and say nothing. Life's too precious to have amazing thoughts about people and to say nothing. I gotta be honest, about 7, 8 years ago, I've always liked people. I just have always been like a fan of people. I just like people. Like some of you, I don't even know you, but I like it. You know, I just have always liked people. I find people interesting, and even people that are like kind of like jerks, I kind of like them too. Like I just like people. I'm just really into people. And so for a long time in my life, I've always had very high thoughts about people, but it wasn't honestly until about 8 years ago that I made a conscious decision. I'm going to tell people what I think about them to the benefit. Come on, some of you, it's like, yeah, I tell people what I think about them. You need to chill out. You're going to have no friends in about a month and a half still rocking like that, you know? But can I just tell you, man, what a tragedy to think so highly of a friend and never tell them how great of a friend they are. Man, what a tragedy to think your wife is killing it and doing an amazing job and not tell your wife she's killing it and doing an amazing job. What a tragedy to have kids that are doing great in school and you never tell them, man, way to go, kudos, good for you. What a tragedy. Come on, to have a boss that's just kind of pleasant to work for and to never just go, you know what, you're awesome to work for. Thank you so much. Come on, I don't want to just have great thoughts about people. I want to communicate some things to people. Come on, you got to say what you mean to say. Life is precious. Here's another, I think, really important thing to do when life is happening quick. Get perspective. Get perspective. Here's a way you get perspective. Talk to people that have been in a career for a while. Get perspective from them. I think we live in this day and age where too many people want too many things too quickly. Too many people want too many things too quickly. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they're confused. How come they haven't got a promotion or how come they haven't got a pay bump? They've worked at this company for like a year and a half. It's like, because you haven't done anything. Like you've produced nothing. Like you haven't done anything yet. Listen, you got to talk to some people that have some perspective that can help you see, no, man, you got to stay at it for a while. Man, you got to keep going. In fact, one of the things I did that I find interesting is I was looking at the top 34 inventions of all time. And what age were they when they invented these top 34 inventions of all time? Now, when I say top 34 inventions, you're like, what are those? It's like the wheel. Like, pretty important to our everyday life, the wheel, right? You know what I mean? Like, I mean the most basic top inventions. And here were the age breakdowns. I found it incredibly fascinating. From the ages of 21 to 25, there was 1. From the ages of 26 to 30, there was 3. Ages of 31 to 35, there was 5. Ages of 36 to 40, there were 9. Now this is the highest right here. Ages 41 to 45, there was 11. Come on, anybody in the room who's 41 to 45 in here right now? We're counting on you, man. We're counting on you. You're our hope, right? Ages 46 to 50, there were 2. And ages 51 to 55, there were 3. I say all that to say, some of you, man, you're 37 years old and you're discouraged about where you're at. You're 37 years old. You're good. Like keep going. There's more things that you feel like life is passing you by. Chill out. Some of you are like, by the way, man, if I had $1, like I don't know why this is a new thing, but like if you're 25 and you ever say like, man, I'm getting up there, I'm gonna judo chop you to the throat. On behalf of everybody else in the room over 35. Like we're just gonna collectively judo chop you to the, oh man, I'm just getting old, my knees. Like we are all gonna judo chop you to the throat. Man, I had $1, like man, 23 years old, I'm getting up there. Like stop. And even if you're doing it for a joke, you are psychologically messing with yourself. You're actually psychologically, if you're 28 years old and you're like, oh man, life's just passing me by, you are psychologically doing damage to yourself. Because you are going to panic. And you are going to do something. You're gonna rush into a relationship you have no business rushing into. You're gonna rush into a job that you have no business rushing into. Why? Because you're just looking at other people. So you gotta get perspective. And then number 3, this is a big one. When life is happening quick, you gotta unchain yourself. You gotta unchain yourself. You and I are slaves only to what we surrender to. We are slaves only to what we surrender to. Some of you, you're dying under the weight of your calendar, of which you have more authority than you think you do. It's amazing how many people I talk to, and they're just dying under the weight of their calendar. They're just being crushed under the weight of their calendar. And by the way, all you're doing is saying, hey, I surrender when you're not leading your calendar. Can I just be honest? I think a lot of our stuff could be figured out if we could figure out our calendar. I think a lot of our stuff, by the way, you'll make more painful decisions, more sin decisions when you're tired. What is that? That's a calendar issue. That's you figuring out how to steward life, right? And I think sometimes we go, well, man, I gotta do this job and I gotta do that. No, here's always how I break down life. I break down life and there are hours in my week that are accounted for, right? If you work, I gotta work. So there are hours in my week, like on Sunday from about 6 a.m. to about 8 p.m. accounted for. 8 to 10 p.m., not accounted for. That's 2 hours on my most busy day. 2 hours, unaccounted for. I can pray with my wife for 20 minutes. I can have an awesome conversation with my wife for 30 minutes on my busiest day. I can spend quality time with my wife during those days. Other days a week, normal, right? 8 to 5 or so, accounted for. 6 to 8, unaccounted for. That's 2 hours. 5 to 10, unaccounted for. That's another 5. I got 7 hours tomorrow. What can I do in 7 hours? I think sometimes we're running this rat race and we don't realize how much time we actually have. And we're going, man, I haven't had time. I don't have time to read my Bible. I don't have time to pray. Yes, you do. You do. And by the way, can I speak to maybe the guys that like, maybe you operate and you have a lot of people that work for you. Some of you, it's like you started companies and you did this stuff. Listen, you got to be careful that you're modeling what is sustainable for the people that follow you. You got to be really careful that this is a sustainable thing. Man, you got to unchain yourself. And then, so we know this, right? Life is quick, but life is long too. Life is long. I want to have the team come up because we're going to get really spiritual. James chapter 5, verse 7. So in one regard, he says, just focus on today. Today's all you got. And then James chapter 5, verse 7, be patient, wait it out. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient and establish your hearts. Man, we used to be just way more easily entertained. We used to be way more easily, before the machines got us, we used to be way more easily entertained. And now what's interesting is we're kind of weirded out by people that are easily entertained. In fact, the other day, Christina and I were at Starbucks, right? Christina and I were at Starbucks the other day. And when we were there, as we were at Starbucks, it was, we go there and we order our drink and we sit down. And it was really interesting because we got there and like sitting right across from us was this guy. And it really weirded me out because he didn't have his phone out. I felt very uncomfortable. Right, he didn't have his phone out, and so he's. I'm sure the team's coming out any moment, right? Okay, perfect. He didn't have anything going on, and he literally had a cup of coffee. He didn't have his phone out, and by the way, he was not with anybody. Just sitting there, had his coffee out. Didn't have a book in his hand. Didn't have a book. What kind of monster? Didn't have a paper. Wasn't perusing the newspaper. He's sitting there. This is literally what he's doing. He just. Me and Christina don't know what to do. Like, me and Christina have no idea what to do. Like, literally, Christina are like, do you see this guy over here to our right? We're like, this brother doesn't even have a book in his hand. Like is he waiting for somebody? I hope somebody's coming. We sat there for an hour with like a book, our iPad, our computer, each other. Like we were there for like an hour. Nobody came the whole time for an hour. Remember when we used to be that easily entertained? And now what happens, check this out, now what happens, we are so overstimulated that we actually think that a healthy pace is slow. We actually think that a sustainable pace is actually slow because we are so overstimulated. We don't know how to just sit there. We just don't know how to chill. So I talk to people all the time, they're like, I just feel like I've been waiting forever. No, you've just been sitting having a cup of coffee for an hour. That's all you've been doing. but it's because you're always on your phone and you're always comparing and you're always looking around and you're not running your race. You're trying to run their race, but you're calling it your race. You know all the stuff to say. I know the stuff to say. But we're going, man, I remember when I used to be easily entertained. I remember when I didn't know anything about you and I was just focused on, man, God, how are you hardwiring me? God, what are you asking me to do? And there's some things that I think really make life seem long. Here's a few of them. Number one, a difficult circumstance. Like something like a dead-end job. A dead-end job. Or maybe you're chasing a degree, you're not even sure why you're in that degree. That can make life seem long. Another thing that can make life seem long is just monotony. Just like we're doing the same thing day in and day out. Unfulfilled dreams can make life seem long. Feel like, man, purpose. I'm purposeless. I just, life feels long. So what to do when life is dragging along? Here's a few things. Number one, reassess what you're looking at. Reassess what you're looking at. Come on, if you're in a difficult circumstance, you got to reassess what you're looking at. Stop focusing on what you don't have, start focusing on what you do have. In fact, one of my biggest pet peeves, I have a lot of them, but one of my biggest pet peeves are whenever I hear Christians in general, but especially other pastors, because pastors are supposed to know what it's like to lead a congregation, what it's like to lead a church and the highs and lows of it and all that kind of stuff. It drives me crazy whenever I hear pastors bashing another church and bashing another leader. It drives me nuts. I love correcting it every chance I get. It's one of my favorite things to do. And the reason, here's why I don't like it. Here's why I don't like it. For many reasons, but one of the primary reasons why I don't like it, in fact, what'll happen is I'll be at a pastor gathering and somebody will ask me what I think about somebody else's church or what somebody else is doing. I say this every time. I got a hard enough time leading my own church. You're probably killing it, bro. You're probably doing a fantastic job. You seem like the best leader ever. But I got a hard time. I don't have time to think about what that person should do. I'm going, God, you put Grace City in my hands. If you wanted me to lead that church, you would have had me lead that church. God, help me be better at stewarding and leading the thing that you've called me to lead. I need to change what I'm looking at. Life seems long if I'm trying to correct everybody else's world. Instead of just going, God, this is what you gave me. And I'm gonna get busy with what you gave me. And there's fruit in that. There's joy in that. Here's another thing to do. This is a huge one. What to do when life is dragging along? Spice it up. It's on you. Spice it up. It's on you. Stop waiting for somebody else to give you an exciting life. I mean, that is on you. I think too many times we're like, oh man, I'm in a boring job. No, you're boring. You're boring. You want, this is a true story. I've used this in a message before, but it just bears repeating for this. You want to know what I do when I take out the dishes in my dishwasher? I set a timer on my microwave. This is not hyperbole. I really do this. So when I'm taking out the dishes out of my dishwasher, I set a timer because I'm going for a PR. Right now my PR is like 2 minutes and 56 seconds. Dishes out, dishes in. So I'll put the timer on the thing and I'm like, okay, here we go. Mama say, mama sa samaku-san. Like, okay. I got this in me. It's Tuesday and we're taking out the dishes. What a time to be alive. Boom, and I go and I'm taking those dishes out. That's why all of our dishes are chipped, by the way, all of them. We do not have a dish that is not chipped. We need new dishes, right? And I'll start putting them away and boom, I'll shut the thing and I'll hit the timer and oh man, I can do better. I got 5 seconds. I got to shave off 5 seconds. I'm not waiting for somebody else to give me an exciting life. I'm not waiting for somebody to come in and spice it up. I was talking to this is a true story. I was talking to a person who's grown up. It always drives me crazy. Like people that like grew up in Lakeland and they're like 19 years old and they're like, Lakeland's boring. I'm like, no, you're boring. You're a boring person. I live in Lakeland too. I'm having the time of my life. You're boring. You're boring me right now with this conversation. Why? Because it's up to you. Come on, I know people living in New York City that are bored. This is not about your circumstance. This is about you spicing it up. Come on, my faith is dry because you're dry. Show up. I'm gonna worship with hands lifted high and with an out of tune voice, whether I feel like it or not. I'm gonna show up. And come on, and I'm gonna put some timer on the clock when I take out the dishes. Why? Because it's Wednesday. It's on you. It's not on anybody else. Come on, when life is dragging along, this is a big one. You gotta lean into God. You gotta lean into God. Because by the way, when life seems long, let me just let you in on a secret, it's on purpose. It's on purpose. Because here's what I know to be true about the enemy. If he can't stop you, he'll speed you up. So when life seems long, there's a purpose for it. And so instead of complaining about it, you ought to get on your knees and go, God, I'm not really where I thought I would be at this age. Things aren't working out the way that I hoped they would. But I also understand you to be a God of process. You want to know, I love that, one of my favorite just like little moments in the Bible that has just helped me so much is that all the disciples wanted Jesus to go down to Jerusalem because he had been preaching in the countryside and their ministry was blowing up. People by the thousands coming to hear Jesus preach, but he was preaching in the countryside. And so the disciples are thinking practically, they're going, man, if he would do this in Jerusalem, in the city, this thing would explode even more. So they're like, hey, Jesus, like, let's go to the city. And he goes, no, it's not my time yet. The reason why he knew it wasn't his time is because once he went to Jerusalem, they would arrest him and crucify him. So he was still in his public ministry. He was still preaching. And he said this, and by the way, he could say this to you and I. This is what he said to the disciples. He said, no, it's not my time yet. For you, any time is okay. For you, any time's the right time. Come on, you ever pray for something and like, for us, any time is the right time? Like, especially like now is like the best time, you know? But there is a pace to grace. There is a pace to what God wants to do. There is a pace to God's plan for your life. And so when life seems like it's dragging, you ought to pause and go, why? Christina and I waited for almost a decade to have children, praying about it every day for a decade. And can I just tell you now, as I look in hindsight, I'm glad we had kids when we did. I'm gonna be 20 years older than every parent when we drop our kids off at kindergarten, but that's okay. I have more money than them. Honestly, I look back and I'm like, God, your timing is perfect. Man, the stuff we were crying out for 10 years ago, God, you deliver now. And the community we get to raise, we didn't have this community 10 years ago. We weren't in the situation, the season where we were in 10 years ago. But there is a timing to all this. So my prayer for you and my prayer for me is that we would know what season we're in. And when we're in a short season, when life is moving quick, man, we would know what to do. And when life seems like it's dragging, we would know what to do. Because the perception of time has more to do with just how it feels. It actually has to do with how we interact with our situations. And I don't know about you, but I want to get everything I can out of my life. And so much of that is the decisions I make at incredibly key times. Come on, church, let's stand to our feet.